go to the next slide. Just a quick PDA stenting update. The first pick I was a complete canal. So I know we hear these words a lot: complete repair, double outlet right ventricle. Wait 1 second. The banner for the recording is like right where I can't see the top of my slide. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, complete AFSD with double outlet right. That's okay. Double outlet right ventricle, pulmonary atresia, and I got it. I fixed it. Ductal dependent pulmonary blood flow, which of course is what we're interested in. If you look at the heart itself, when they say double outlet right ventricle, if you look at where the right ventricle is, and the right ventricles are usually drawn in these drawings as the bumpy one because there's tribeculations in the right ventricle, the left ventricle is smooth walled. You can kind of see how the right ventricle is pointing to both the aorta and the atretic pulmonary valve. Complete canal, it kind of means like the center of the heart's missing in very simple terms. So you can see that on this slide. So some of the questions with the stenting, it talks about sheath time calculation. If you look through the cath report, you can look at where the access was obtained. It means sheath inserted. Those are like simple words. And if you look on the little plug I put from the charting, it was 942 was access obtained. That means that's when the sheaths were in. And then 1047, you can see sheaths removed, holding pressure until hemostasis. Checking for inotropes and prostaglandins. I just, if it's not in the record itself, sometimes the attendings will put in the cath record that PGE was on until during the cath, or PGE was on. Or you can look in like this. I looked right in the anesthesia record and you see the alprostadil, the PGE is on, and then milrinone. So that's an inotrope. So I can kind of like quickly glance and see that those things were on. Oh, I see I have a typo. I have it said discharged on transfer to cath lab. Kelly, I understand that's the PC4 guidelines. If they're on prostaglandins and anesthesia just disconnects for transfer, you still count that as prostaglandins on at time of procedure?
Yeah,
that's what my PC4 people
here at CHOP. Yeah, I can't
yeah,
speak.
That's what we do here.
But that's my interpretation. That's how we record it here.
And we're going to do the same thing. I'm not going to make different rules for us than you guys have in PC4 because I think that would be crazy. Does anyone have questions about the anatomy on this case? You can also kind of look, and if you're going to take a guess on what kind of repair eventually this child's going to have, my guess is they're eventually going to have a 2 ventricle repair. If I looked into the echo report, it said that it had good systolic function for both the RV and the LV. So that's usually also an indication. If it already says that they've got 2 good ventricles in an echo report or in a cath report, generally they're going to try and do a 2 ventricle repair. Did anybody have questions about this? Okay, we can go on to the next slide. And this is the same kid. They draw the little stent in. And one of the questions is, where was the stent delivered from? If I look in the body of this cath, it said that a limited right and left heart cath was performed via the axillary artery sheath into the descending aorta and ultimately across the PDA. Well, that's pretty clear that it went from the axillary. So that's that. Stents type and size, nominal diameter and length. It's always diameter first, length second. So it's a 4x20, 5x20, whatever it is. Its diameter comes first when you list stents, length comes second. A Synergy DES, drug-eluting stent. It's pretty easy. If you see the stent and you're not sure if it's drug-eluting or not, and they don't have it in the cath report, it's a pretty easy Google search to see if that's something that has a drug on it or not. I think most of people in the collaborative are using drug-eluting stents for PDAs. And then as you see, I read onto the cath, it has a second stent that went in, transversing the first stent and crossing. And then at the end, the last statement was complete coverage of the PDA without aortic obstruction or branch jailing. So that answered those 2 questions were answered in that. When it talked about PDA tortuosity, if it's 1 curve, 2 curve, a long tortuous horizontal PDA tells me that's the tortuous option with more than 1 curve. Any questions about this kid?
So if it says
Once you,
obstruction, is that in regards to the stent, that's jailing, right?
yes, that would be, yeah, that would be the
Okay.
aorta would be jailed.
Because I
Or
think
if it has like
seen
there's,
that before in a CAP report where it says there's no obstruction of the branch PH aorta, but I'm like, so is that jailings? And so that's good to know.
yeah. Okay, we can go to the next. And let's talk about jailing. There is some really nice explanation of jailing in the data entry guidebook and in the FAQ document, the FAQ document. This kid is a pulmonary atresia, intact ventricular septum, even though they kind of do have a little bit of a VSD, but it's blocked by tissue, so they're calling it intact. The hypoplastic tricuspid valve, so you can kind of see the little valve into this minuscule RV. There was really no RV outflow. It was completely atretic and ductal dependent pulmonary blood flow. And they also had ventricular coronary connection. So when they talk about ventricular dependent coronary circulation, it's kind of, you kind of need that little bit of an RV and you need high pressure to force blood through the coronaries. You can see, like, just looking at the picture, you can see the stent jailed. But if you look into the body of the report, it talks about how they went ahead and jailed it. And then they went through the stent side cells to redilate. So kind of just getting used to reading cath reports and seeing if there was jailing, where it was jailed, and how they fixed it. Usually if they talk about going through a side cell or putting a wire through a side cell and a second balloon, that means something was jailed and they opened it back up to establish flow into the pulmonary artery that was jailed. If you look at this heart too, if just kind of looking at it, you're going to guess that this kid is not going to get a 2 ventricle repair either. And if you read the echo report, it said diminutive, severely hypoplastic RV. Actually, this kid went on and had a transplant. Any questions about that?
So this one, I'm sorry, I was reading
Okay.
the
Okay.
report,
Go ahead.
and it
Read
says
it.
just looking at this, so they didn't use a bifurcating, right? Because they're saying that it,
No,
okay,
they did not use it, but they thought about putting
Yeah.
a stent into that, through that side cell. But I've done cath a while, and the enemy of good is better.
Okay.
So
Right,
yeah,
okay,
sometimes if you try and fix it to be perfect, it's good enough, it had good flow, it's better sometimes to leave it alone, let the kid grow and figure it out. It's also a lot of times surgeons don't like a lot of stent material into in the PAs. It's a lot for them to deal with when they go to repair later.
that makes sense.
So if you've got good flow and things look good, we can watch with echo and we'll kind of just let it go. It doesn't mean at some point they might need a reintervention on that LPA where it was jailed off. But for right now, there was good flow, enough to let the lung grow, let the kid grow a little bit, and then we'll figure out next steps. Okay, we can go to the next. All right, here's the tricky part. And I like this picture because this is a simple tetralogy, quote unquote simple, but the basic tetralogy, but it has a right aortic arch and the duct, as you can see, comes off the left innominate artery. Most of the time, the PDA will come from the underside or near the aorta somewhere. In this kid, it did not. Now, the data capture form is something I keep as a Word document. If you guys don't have it, we can let us know. We can send it out. And I believe it's a resource document too, but I will email this or bring it to my attending when we meet once a month. And I'd say like, hey, you did this many PDA stents. I am trying to talk them into putting these data elements into their cath template. So I don't have to keep asking, but it's a nice, if you want your attendings or your interventionalists to try and include this, you can show them this document and say, these are the things we need to know. It's a pretty concise thing. It'd be easy enough to put it as part of a PDA stenting template. And that was the quick and dirty PDA stenting.
Thanks, Sharon.
Does anybody have, yeah, any questions about that or any other questions in general?
No, I don't have a question, but I would love to see what you had on that worksheet if possible. Just because I haven't started, I mean, you know, once I get going with this, I want to make sure I have all my ducks in a row and I can share that with my impact person who used to work in the cath lab, who can tell me whether or not, you know, we cover all that anyway. I'm still learning how to read the cath reports.
They can be complicated and in my experience, different attendings phrase things differently and put stuff in different spots. But it's once you get used to reading them, then it's not as time consuming to go through them. You get pretty good at picking out what pictures or what sections of the cath report you need to look at to find the information. It's just getting used to how people document and where they document stuff. And if we, Rachel, do you just want to send, do you have Elizabeth's email? I can send a Word. I have it as a Word document. Just send it to, I keep them on my, I just keep them in my in my personal drive and like print out 4 or 5 of them. And then when I go meet my attending, if there's PDA stents that they haven't included the information, hopefully I'm thinking if I bother them enough that eventually they'll just make it part of the report template to keep me from emailing them and talking to them.
Wear them down, Sharon.
One can hope.
We're in the
I'm trying.
mission.
Thank
Send it
you.
to me, I'll circulate to everybody along with the
Thank you.
today. Stop the record. Any more questions or I'm going to stop the recording?